Hello and welcome to the GA Plus Analysis Show. Over the next 11 weeks, we will try our very best, Séamus, to look at some of maybe the key patterns, results, plays, and everything else that goes with the Hurling Championship. We must have done a reasonably okay job to have, got the invite back for 11 more seasons. But in saying 11 more series, but in saying that, after maybe 3 or 4, they might cut us.
Yeah, I'm convinced, Noel, they couldn't find anybody else. But it's great to be back. It's great to be talking to you about hurling. It's great that Championship is here again. It's all good.
Yeah, and maybe it's the starting point might be with the results over the weekend, because some strange results in many ways. Who expected 2 draws in Munster? There was probably an expectation in Leinster, right, that Kilkenny were going to beat Galway at home, that Wexford were obviously going to beat Antrim. And then the
There's no obviously about Wexford beating Antrim, is there?
I know last year they didn't, but I suppose going based on like the league campaign again, the league is something you can base it off now. The way teams are kind of setting up and playing.
Yeah, we got 3 highly competitive games. Like Dublin Offaly was a cracker, and Offaly have obviously proven that they belong. That Dublin fixture was in their crosshairs for weeks. Even after they did the job in Croke Park. So to be ahead 3 points after 68 minutes and lose by 3 is testament to Dublin. Great stuff. Ronan Hayes, his goal was key, but to me it's competitive in Munster every year. The 2 games were absolutely incredible, but it's very interesting to see Offaly show their strength. Wexford have obviously started with a full complement of players, which is unusual for them the last few years. So I think that result against Antrim is important for them. It gives them a springboard to build off of. So the results, the Galway Kilkenny one is the most disappointing of all of them. But there was plenty of really good hurling across the other fixtures.
Yeah, and even like just going back to the Galway Antrim game in particular, we seem to be talking this nearly at the start of every season for the last 3 or 4 seasons. Lee Chin was 16 points he got. That was probably the negative from a Wexford point of view, is we're overly reliant on him. However, the positive that I would see would be they were down to 14 men and they obviously won in the end, which is hugely positive. And they only conceded, I think, 9 points to play.
Yeah, so like Jack O'Connor was off in the first half. So it's not as if they just had to survive 10 minutes at the end of the game, so they had to play the full game. And yes, Lee had 16 points. He scored 4 from play, so he's going to be a key figure for them. There's no maybe. Like Wexford use him far better than Galway use Conor Whelan. So we'll talk about that in a while. But it's fine relying on a fella if he's delivering. So it's when he stops delivering that's the issue. So, but we'll see how Wexford actually managed it. But I think he does have support around him. They showed it last year. I think Wexford, we'll see from the results against Galway, against Dublin, against Kilkenny. See what happens.
Yeah, and even like with the results from the weekend, it already is leading to like so many different like permutations of who wins and who doesn't win. Because even last year we were talking about 4 points get you through in Munster. Maybe you might get through with 3. You just don't know.
There has to be. I'd say there has to be now. The number of teams on 1 point in Munster. I'd be amazed if there isn't a scrap with 3 teams on 3 or 2 teams on 3 looking for the 3rd spot. Does it look like anybody's going to blow out the rest of the competition for the next 4 weeks in Munster? I don't think so. There's no team that looks good enough to do that. I think the only team that's happy is probably Waterford, because they're not actually behind. They did nothing, and they have nothing to make up.
Yeah, and even in Leinster, and we'll move on to some of the analysis in a second. But even from like the result from Noel Park, like that in itself probably gives other teams a bit of kind of impetus, because it was such a convincing result from Kilkenny. Are we going to be in a position now where we won't see Galway going through for the 2nd year in a row?
See, this is the thing now. So they're under pressure from the get-go now. So Galway would have kind of trusted themselves to beat Dublin, to beat Wexford in the past. I don't think you can do that now. I don't think you can take any game for granted if you're Galway. I think you're under pressure straight away. I think the rest of them are absolutely chomping at the bit to get you into their ground, or even go up to Salt Hill. Salt Hill is a tough place to go to. But it's going to be a really an uphill climb, I would say, for Galway, to kind of come from the performance level that they put out, and to compete with the other counties now in Leinster, because last year wasn't an abomination. It was part of the transition. It wasn't, we've seen that Micheál Donoghue hasn't completely fixed things, so they've work to do.
Yeah. And you know what? We'll start with a bit of Munster hurling. Had the pleasure of being there and watching like what was an absolute like epic game. One of those games that will probably be discussed for the next like decade or more, just because it was such an up and down game, ebb and flow, more or less goal for goal. And the key thing that
the Thurles game. It was just what was great about it was, and contrast that then to the comeback that Clare had to come back after being largely blown out of it. So they didn't start the game well, right? Whereas Tip and Limerick really did hit a level of performance, and the quality of hurling on show in Thurles was just superb. And I would say right throughout the game. And the fact that no team was ahead by more than 3 points at any stage was very, very impressive. Like, so
the referee, in fairness to the referee now, I know he's a Waterford man, and I had a chat with him beforehand. I actually thought that he allowed the hurling like do its thing rather than becoming a figure that was going to dictate what happened. Now, I know you're going to talk about the hand passing and so on and so forth, but I thought
I wouldn't have any complaints.
I thought he was very fair, and I think that as a team, all you want is fairness.
Yeah, but I would like to think we can go through the championship, at least hope for 95% of the championship, and we won't talk about the referee's influence on the game. The referee shouldn't have that much of an influence on the game. All things going well, he's done a great job if we're not talking about him. So, I would say, we just sent off in Ennis. Unfortunately, I feel like the referees bought what they were sold. Very disappointing from Shane Barrett's perspective, but that is what it is. But referees, by and large, when it comes to championship, they tend to keep their whistles quieter, and everybody loves it. But that can be frustrating then for players who think frees are free. So it's it does seem to be a bit of a like the Tipperary Limerick game. How could you not let the players play with the intensity and the collisions that were going on? Otherwise, you'd have been stopping every 25 seconds, I'd say.
And like that's one of the key points that I suppose looked at. I think it was 76 turnovers in that game versus I think there was 30 less, give or take, in the Clare Cork game. So I was really curious to see like where were a lot of the turnovers coming from. So the first thing that I looked at was, I suppose, the tackle, as in like carrying the ball into tackle and then obviously not run into the tackle with the ball. So it was more around the release and the turnover than it was anything else. So I took a few clips on what you should try to do versus what you shouldn't do. So this ball has not been turned over from what you shouldn't do, and we'll talk about this one in a second. But Colin Coughlin sees the break coming here, and he is already looking at Cian Lynch, but he gets on the break here really, really well. As you can see, key thing here is he hits John really well, as in like he hits and kind of rolls him. But the key point here is he's gone around John McGrath's body, so he can actually release the ball with his hand. So essentially, like, he can get the pass off, and it's a really, really good pass. Again, this is the same thing. This was a brilliant goal. Noel McGrath stops it, hits the tackle. He is now gone outside of Kyle Hayes, which means he can actually pass the ball. So he has a good handoff. Again, if you get a good handoff, it means then that players can run off your shoulder. Lovely ball here. So again, O'Mara gets what hits, and that actually propels him forward. You can see now, because he's in front of him, that he actually has the ball and has possession of the ball, and therefore he's in control. Ironically enough, he actually gives a reasonably poor pass here to Jake, who does incredibly well to pass it off to Tynan. Again, Tynan takes the hit and passes on again. So because they're after taking so many hits and passing on, you can see the amount of Limerick players that are now pulled towards the ball. So Pop, and now John McGrath is probably the key to this, because he sees that they're on the run in the break. He can actually peel off like every good forward does, and obviously just gets the ball past Nicky Quaid. But the key thing here is you have to get past the player. How you get past the player is you either go past the tackler or you turn around and give it to someone better. You can't pass through someone. It's very difficult to pass it over someone. So you either have to get yourself around and try and pass the ball around somebody, or you go back. And it's probably not something that a lot of teams want to do, go back in the tackle, but there's generally someone behind you for a little pop pass. On the opposite side of it, you have the don'ts. Okay, and we saw this quite a lot now. Again, conditions were really poor in Tipperary, as in like poor weather. Okay, ball passed across, great block here by O'Mara, but it's very unlike Ron O'Mara. Generally, he likes hitting the tackle, but he pops the pass. Because he pops the pass to the middle, it caused a lot of issues. So rather than going to the side, again, O'Mara is actually an option on the outside here, which is away from the goal. He pops the pass. As you see, Cian Lynch reads the pop and it breaks. If O'Brien was a bit more on his toes, he actually could have got in there for a goal if it popped the right way for him. So popping the ball into space or in over people causes issues. Okay, you'll see it here again. McCarthy was absolutely brilliant, but rides a good tackle here on Cian Lynch. As you can see, Cian's hand is down low, and that's the key thing about this possession. When players are coming in, you'll see Tom comes in now, and again, his left hand is down low, bang, down low over the shoulder. So when he actually tries to release the ball, he actually can't, and therefore it hits Tom's body and actually propels the other way. So that's a really good tackle. But again, how that happened is because he actually didn't go beyond the body of the opposition. Okay, again, same thing here. You'll see it. Ball comes across. I thought he was brilliant fullback. Connie, I thought he was absolutely brilliant. But again, hits Kyle Hayes, doesn't go beyond the tackle. Okay, as you can see, he has an option. It's a slip back, or you go back to your keeper. They're options. The last thing you want to do is throw a ball up in front of Kyle Hayes, who's probably 6'4", because he's going to block you in some capacity. But look at Kyle Hayes' hand. His hand now is drawn towards where the ball is to try and stop it. Again, top pass, really very poor miss, but that becomes an issue. If he rides the tackle, well, then obviously he gets the ball free. If you don't, you need to slip the ball back. Again, Ronan Maher, lovely ball out. Great out ball here to Jake Morris. Jake actually realised that he's not going to beat Reedy in the speed. So what he does, he actually gets past Hegarty, great pop pass, but then what happens is Caesar pops the ball before he actually rides the tackle. And then all of a sudden it becomes a bit messy. Okay, so if you're going to win the ball, you have to go beyond the tackle. So here you go again. He's not beyond the tackle, flicked away, and could have very easily been a goal. So the key point there for me is, if you're going to offload the ball, you need to go beyond the body of the tackle, or you go back the way. So again, he's gone back. You don't do this. Mikey Carey, flick in, or Jordan Malloy, flick in, and then you're putting yourself under savage pressure. Okay? Yeah. That really, really causes trouble. And that's how Limerick are so good, because Limerick are always concerned with what hand you have your ball in, i.e. the vast majority of people have it in their left hand.
Yeah, okay. Great sliding tackle as well by Malloy. It was very good. But it's, to me, every time you're coached, if you're taking the ball into contact, it's in your possession. It's not popped. It's not in transfer mode. You are taking contact with the ball fully in control. As soon as you leave the ball out of control, put it towards your hurley, try to put a pass in contact, then that's turnover territory. Yeah. And in modern hurling, like, it's so hard. Like you saw in the Tipperary goal, right? That was a lot of just in time passing, like right on time. It was something like from Welsh rugby from the 80s. It was just amazing, the ball transfer, and just how well they were.
It was like a drill you do in training. It's like a drill, you know, those drills you do in training where you're hitting tackle bags, you're going and you're saying, like, when is this actually going to like transfer into reality? Like there's your answer.
Yeah, but what I loved at the end, right, was there's two things. Brian O'Mara, just before he goes to give the pass to John McGrath, he gives that ball early. He doesn't draw Mike Casey. He doesn't draw the last man. He delays and makes the defender commit. And then once the defender commits, then when I'm fullback, I'm like, oh, well, now it's the goalie. It's the goalie or no one. And so it was Nicky Quaid's problem after that. And you can't come out 7 yards from goal. So like it was just perfection. And it was probably one of the best goals I've ever seen. Worked from the position, was worked on their own 45. And it was such a crucial time.
That goal really frustrated John Coyle, and I tell you why, because doing post-match interview with him, it was actually the one thing he referred to. It was that they had the ball in possession for that goal, and Noel McGrath dispossessed it. So that was a huge bugbear, it sounded like, because generally when we spoke, we done like stuff on this last year around like the quick sideline. The vast majority of people are doing it now. And it's very un-Limerick-like to give away possession when you have possession on your own.
But what was banana about that is it was a set piece on the sideline, and the Limerick man wasn't goal side. how Kyle wasn't goal side of that is
Yeah.
beyond me. So like it as in like defensively, it's something that Noel McGrath was goal side, Tipperary goal side of Kyle, able to cut out a sideline. Now English was hitting him really well. It was kind of very unusual that he was intercepted, but that's a structural, that's a disciplinary thing where you set up for these set pieces. Like, so they're all things that are in your control.
Yeah. You're going to talk us through the hand pass now. So it's kind of like an add-on from what we're doing, but now
it's a great segue. Like, so we've been talking, like people have been talking about the Limerick hand pass for years. The reality is since Limerick have got on top, and like with the attention that was drawn to it during this year's league, last year's league, you hear Congress has decided that the hand pass now is under a microscope. Then you get it penalised for a couple of games, and then it goes away. But here, there was 4 calls made in about 13 minutes in the second half, and you know, when we were talking about where we give the hand pass a few minutes ago in terms of into contact, some of that is in there, some of it's decision making, but then other times, if the referee had blown it, you would give him a reason to blow it. It's the player's responsibility to sell it. And Aidan O'Connor came on as a second half substitute. He goes to ground. He's looking for someone to support him, but Cian Lynch has hit the deck, and so he holds it an extra second. And then by the time Cian is up ready to receive it, he has to flick it on. Here we've got Colin Coughlin. You've showed him doing really good work getting his hands free earlier, but this time you've got, I think is it Jason Ford comes across, or is it Conor Bowe comes across with the hurley? It's Tynan hits him first. Tynan hits him first, but I think Conor Bowe comes in late and he gets the hurley to Coughlin's left hand, and he can't get the striking motion. So to me, if you're going to give that hand pass, it has to have the room to actually give it the full swing. Here we have Noel McGrath. So this is Tipperary were penalised. I feel like Noel was kind of a little unfortunate that Limerick were doing it just down the Farron. Noel's gift is that he always has the head up looking for where the ball is going. This time you can see on the replay, he just ran into an alley and tried to get rid of it quick. I still think it was probably a decent pass, so I think he was hard done by. Here we have David Reedy wins a really good ball. Now Will keeps his hands up and free of the Tipperary tacklers, but it's the throw. Like, and you can see it here in the replay. Like, so when you get your hands up, that's fine, but there has to be a striking motion. You can see it. It's a really good call. It's a really good call. I think it was a great free to call. And it's you're guilty of not having the separation and the strike. You have to emphasize it. If you're going above the head, it almost has to be a proper handball, like just a proper slap.
You need to see distance between your hand and the ball. That's the reality.
Because you've no excuse that the referee you've given him a decision to make. Sometimes they don't call it, but that was the last score of the game. That was the leveling score.
And it becomes more difficult, particularly because we've been talking about this for the last 5 or 6 years around the bodies around midfield. It becomes very, very difficult when there's so many bodies in around the middle. When it's chaos, you could have you'll have your half forward line, your half back line, and your midfielders all within a very short space, and it's trying to get around them and trying to win the rucks. That is the reality. And you can even see it, and I'm going to talk in the next set of clips. It's not about the hand pass, but it's about bodies getting sucked towards the ball. And it's one thing that Galway, I felt over the weekend, were naive is probably the wrong word to use, but probably not set up particularly well, because last year, again, in one of the clips, we looked at the importance of holding position around Kyle Hayes, Declan Hannon, and Diarmaid Burns, and they hold their shape, which they did again the other day. But if we look at the Galway shape, they just got sucked towards the ball, which meant there was so much room on each side of the challenge. This was only about 36 seconds in. Look at the amount of bodies that are here. But even more concerning is, look at the amount of space that are on each side. So you're now looking at half forward line, midfielders, and even some of your full back line in here. But if you look at Jordan Malloy here, Jordan Malloy takes the chance. Why? Because he sees green grass. Right? There's nobody going to outpass him now, because he's after making the decision. And even with that now, he's gone. There's a couple of things here. He has now taken out the vast majority of the defence for Galway, the midfield, by just taking that chance. There is no half back over there, but also now, because he was on the run, he has created room between him and his opposite number. Okay? If you're being hypercritical, okay, he could have actually went straight down the throat and there was a goal option on. Now, again, that's been hypercritical. I'm very aware that there's 30 seconds in. Probably wants to settle the nerves and get score on the board. Absolutely understandable. But if it was probably a few minutes later, that could have been a goal chance. Again, same thing here. All the Galway players getting sucked underneath the ball. We can see there that Mannion is trying to hold his position and not get sucked. But by the time the ball gets into the ruck or into the numbers, into the bodies, he actually gets sucked in by taking an extra 2 or 3 steps, which means now you can see Billy Ryan on the outside taking a chance again, bang over the bar. He has created that much room, and he's come from deep. He's coming from like midfield, starting his run early and actually getting on and taking the chance. And it's very difficult to defend it. The only thing you can do there is try and hold on to him for a second or two to disrupt his run. Again, this happened again in the second half, first half, all the way through. But again, bodies down here. If we can see the space inside, Billy Ryan realizes that there's actually space inside. So do you know what? He's going to bring Grealish for a run. So again, he goes on his usual loop out around. In fairness, Grealish, he is reasonably touch tight there. But if Kilkenny win this break and get the ball through to the space, Billy Ryan is actually gone, because Grealish actually takes a step here, looks to see where the ball is. Billy Ryan is actually gone. But in that small period of time where the ball is actually stuck in the ground, it allows Grealish to get back onto Billy Ryan. There he is. He realizes he's gone. And only because it slowed down, he got back. But if that's another case where the ball has actually gone through, if it wasn't as wet and heavy underfoot, that was actually a goal chance on. Okay, the opposite side. What Kilkenny done really well, very well structured. Again, ball out Mannion. Richie Reid realizes, you know what? Where is the problem? The problem is on the outside, because that's where the space is. So rather than getting sucked towards the ball and the bodies, he's actually going and saying, you know what? This is where more than likely the ball is going to be, and this is where the problem is. He realizes it. He actually gets a chance to stand up and strike the ball. Like, how many times do you see players actually get a chance to stand like that and strike a ball? Again, poor return. Ball is broken down and they don't get a score off it. But it was the right thing to do. Again, you'll see it here. Again, the ball gets pucked out. You'll see Cathal Mannion, again, typical forward, goes in front of the puck out, in front of the ball, trying to win the ball. Deegan says, you know what? The problem is not in front. The problem is in behind. If the ball breaks, if Kilcannon wins it and he spins Murphy, he's in behind. But if not, Deegan is there, takes the hit and overturned the ball. Okay, same thing here. This is actually a really interesting one, right? Because this is very unforward. Like, so the key thing here is, if we watch Stephen Donnelly, who was only after coming on, he's here in the top right-hand picture. He's wing forward. He doesn't actually follow Brendan at all. So Brendan is wing back. Brendan is trying to drag him out the field to try and create space inside. He says, you know what? I'm looking behind me. That's where the problem is. So he, rather than following his man out, he realizes the space is there, which also allows the ball. It also allows Hugh Lawler to actually step in front. So Hugh Lawler now knows he has cover. Therefore, he can step in front, and Donnelly becomes an option now. Probably a poor ball from two people, as in Lawler, but also Billy Ryan needs to actually take a step in towards the ball. And this is the other consequence. So high ball, what should you do as a back? Richie Reid is on the midfield line there. He's actually running back in behind. Conor Whelan wins the ball, but Richie Reid now is getting back to field. So rather than actually getting sucked up the opposite goal side, he is now getting behind, because what he becomes now is an extra defender, unlike the shape that Galway had in the first kind of half and probably towards the latter end of the second half as well.
The positional sense of Richie Reid and the positional sense of Gavin Lee. Gavin Lee is obviously, he's a young player and he's kind of trying to establish himself. He was literally pulled out of the centre multiple times and deliberately by John Donnelly, by even Billy Ryan. Whereas Richie Reid's positional sense is so good. I thought he was where he needed to be. I would say 97% of the time he was just really, really good at that. So, like, looking at the Galway-Kilkenny game, like you did, Noel, I wanted to look at the Clare-Cork game in a similar kind of a vein as to what went well for Clare or Cork in the first half, and what went well for Clare in the second half, and what was the difference. So I put the clips together based on, it was really a game of two halves, because we talked about it. The Clare really did suffer a bit of an onslaught in the first half, where Cork went at them. And I just want to show exactly where they went at them. And it was repetitive. It was like they were bludgeoned by the same technique, but Cork are doing it really well, subtly well. And then the reverse then in the second half, just to kind of see what did the Clare then decide to pick up on and change. So we started off then with Tim O'Mahony. Tim O'Mahony in the first half just have no interest but just to put the ball direct into their bunched forwards formation. You can see the space left and right of the two forwards inside there. You've got Hoggy and Hayes in there at this stage. Connolly joins them sometimes in that D with that space either side. But, it ends up then with a really good chance for Brian Hayes. Kicks it, goes wide, but, it shows the intent from Cork. It's Tim O'Mahony again on the ball here. Again, only interested in a long, direct ball. This time we have the three bunch forwards inside there. And when it breaks, it's an uncomfortable place for a defender. Noel, like when the ball drops, the break is there. It's an uncomfortable place to be that close to goal and know that there's a loose ball. And, Cork did that early and often. And that long ball tactic, they did it from a couple of different platforms. They did it from Tim O'Mahony in midfield, but they also did it then, from puck-outs and long deliveries. And when that ball did go to ground, it was anybody's game. I think that Clare tried to compete with them in the air, and then when it went to the ground, there was a little bit lacking in terms of structure. Connolly grabs this one, he throws over the bar. I thought he had a great game. I thought he performed really well for a fella that has been streaky in the past. Here we have the short puck-outs. So we saw this last year a lot, was the short puck-out to the cornerbacks. And what they do then is they put it directly down the side to the inside line, which are moving out. Patrick Collins then was comfortable putting the long puck out down the middle. And you see the way the touch there. There is no interest in going up with the hand. Dara Fitzgibbon goes up with the hurley. And it's very, very subtle that he tries to nudge the ball on, not bat it down, score for Harnedy. But here I show this one because, David Fitz, it's not the fact that David Fitz took a shot and missed. It's the quick restart here. So Patrick Collins has the ball in his hand. And David Fitz, you can see here, he's kind of confused. Then you've got Fitzgibbon comes out of the centre. And again, long ball into the D where Hayes, takes a one-on-one situation against Lohan. Lohan can't give him the end line. You just can't. You have to danger the worst case scenario, and that was the goal. So Darragh Lohan got caught there, but Brian Hayes finished so well. Ethan Toomey then again from a puck out, similar to what Fitzgibbon did, but it's low direct ball. Cork used their full forward line more effectively than any other team in the country. They just get such a return from the ball they put in there. And Connolly, look at the work he does there to get the ball across. But that comes from repeated and comfortable use of the long direct ball to the full forward line. This time it's Darragh Fitzgibbon, and only for Eibhear Quilligan and a save here, you've got a very carbon copy goal to Brian Hayes. And the fact that they were doing it over and over again here, had an idea what was coming before the game and that they'd have had measures to avoid this. But it did seem like they were suffering from the same I suppose weakness time and time again, and that was cutting out space to the full forward line. Like, the ball is going there. How do you cut it out? And I felt like they just left way too much space there. And then the wind, long ball is more effective with the wind, and Cork had it. So then what changed into the second half? So the second half then for me then, it was a pivotal moment in Clare's season really, because they were down 12 points at halftime. Brian Lohan is in the dressing room. You can't overdo it because you lose people. But the first 5 minutes of the second half and the intent that Clare showed was the intensity that they brought was important. But there was a couple of things specifically that they did. One of them which was just to copy what Cork did and go direct. But another, and you see it early here, was the willingness of the half forward line to come deeper. And Clare's half forward line coming deeper, the likes of Tony and Peter Duggan and Cathal Malone and Ryan Taylor, all finding themselves back further the field, meant they were able to close down Cork's attack in the middle, but also deliver long direct ball and resulting in a great touchdown, a break, and a goal. So that was a great start and the shot in the arm that they needed at the beginning of the half. So here you have then again the ball been worked out from the back, and who's picking it up? Tony Kelly on his own 21. And when Tony takes that, then again he's got the length to deliver that with the wind and to make that effective. And David Reedy breaks on so well to Duggan's touch. So Tony was so effective back the field. And then when we go for the long puck out that Patrick Collins had in the first half, you've got competition from Darragh Lohan behind now, but also Conlon attacks his hurley hand to make sure he doesn't get the break that he's looking for, that deft touch forward to Harnedy here in picture looking for a break. And Conlon, I thought, just played that a good bit better. And when it got to ground, they fought for it. Colin Malone, in this case, did really, really well. And so then, they've made use of Duggan, but then the puck out from the short puck out to Sean O'Donoghue, it doesn't have the length because it's against the breeze. Conlon's able to cut it out, so that direct ball from the short puck out is off. Then we've got, Clare Quilligan aiming for his big guys then, so his direct puck out to Fitzgerald works. Duggan comes onto it, gets a flake and score. But then, for me, then the key score of the game then was, Clare 8 points down with 65 minutes gone on the clock. There's a breaking ball here, a ruck in the middle of the field. It's won by Tony Kelly out of the middle of the field again, and he works it on. And he puts in, David Reedy puts in just a hopeful ball to Duggan, and this is one of the best individual efforts that we were going to see all year. What a superb goal from Duggan. Duggan is that kind of guy. He's that guy that can elevate this and put this Clare team on his back, similar to what Tony did in the All-Ireland last year. But Peter has that capability and that ability. He's obviously, his size is huge, and in a game like yesterday, Owen Downey wasn't able for him. Rob had just gone off. He'd been hurt, and that was a huge loss for Cork. I don't think people realised it. Rob Downey and Duggan had that titanic battle in Páirc Uí Chaoimh last year. For me, that's who they wanted, Mark and Duggan one-on-one, not Owen. And Peter was able to win that battle. And that goal that we just saw, that to me is just a force of will. He had so much to do and so much to beat to score that. And Clare were in such a bad spot that they needed that goal. And that to me then was the game.
Great stuff, Séamus. Thanks very much for the great analysis on that. Hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget that Aaron and Michael have the big ball version of this coming out tomorrow in detail. It's also on the YouTube channel, GA Plus. For any GA fans, don't forget that we have the big match in Dublin this weekend, Dublin and Wexford, which should be and will be a cracker. So from week 1 of the GA Plus analysis show, thanks so much, and we will see you next week.